He called me a loser in front of his friends for not having a job. They all laughed at me and thought I was nothing, but they had no idea I owned the company they worked for, and the look on their faces was priceless when I fired them and showed them who the real loser was. We need to talk about Claire's situation. Sam's mother Barbara sat in our living room, having assembled what she called an intervention. Sam, his brother Tom, and Barbara all faced me with matching expressions of condescending concern. 3 years without work isn't just laziness anymore, it's pathological, Barbara continued, sliding a brochure across the coffee table. This is a program for chronically unemployable adults. They teach basic skills like showing up on time and dressing appropriately. Sam nodded supportively, reaching over to pat my hand. We're doing this because we love you despite everything. I stared at the brochure, fighting the urge to laugh. If they only knew that their apartment, their cars, even Barbara's recent cruise vacation were all paid for by my company, Apex Solutions, where Sam worked as a middle manager believing he was the breadwinner. The brochure's cover featured a stock photo of a smiling woman in an ill-fitting blazer, standing proudly next to a cash register. Fresh Start, a program for career-challenged adults. I traced my finger along the glossy paper, remembering the last time I'd seen materials like this. It was 5 years ago when I was designing employee assistance programs for Apex Solutions, the company I'd built from my father's life insurance payout after his sudden death. Now here I sat being offered remedial job training by people living off my success. The first step is admitting you have a problem, Tom added, leaning forward with practiced sincerity. He was a therapist, or at least that's what he called himself after getting his online counseling certificate last year. I'd seen the charge on the credit card statement. $800 for a 6-week course. Claire, when was the last time you even updated your resume? My girlfriend Sarah works in HR, and she says gaps longer than 6 months are career death sentences. I wanted to tell him that Sarah worked in HR at a subsidiary of Apex Solutions, that I'd personally reviewed her performance evaluation last quarter, that she was competent but hardly the authority on careers he believed her to be. Instead, I pulled my cardigan tighter around myself and looked down at my lap, the picture of defeat they expected to see. I did update it, I said quietly. Just last week, actually. I have another interview on Tuesday. Barbara's laugh was sharp and bitter. Another interview. How many is that now? 50? 60? At some point, dear, you need to accept that perhaps the problem isn't them. She smoothed her skirt, the designer one she'd bought during her cruise to the Mediterranean last month. I knew because the charge had appeared on the Apex Solutions expense account I'd secretly authorized for Employee Family Wellness, a program that coincidentally covered certain purchases made by the family members of mid-level managers like Sam. Mom's right, Sam said, squeezing my hand in what he probably thought was a comforting gesture. His wedding ring caught the light, the platinum band I'd bought him catching the afternoon sun streaming through our apartment windows. Our apartment. That's what he called it, never knowing the deed was in my name through a trust, purchased with cash 2 years before we'd even met. Maybe it's time to lower your expectations. Start with something entry-level. Retail maybe. Or food service. I heard Starbucks has excellent benefits, Tom offered helpfully. And they're very accepting of people returning to the workforce. Returning to the workforce. As if I'd ever left it. Every morning after Sam left for Apex Solutions, I'd walk 3 blocks to a coffee shop where Patricia, my VP of operations, would meet me with encrypted tablets and secure phones. We'd spend 4 hours managing a company with 3,000 employees across 4 states, making decisions that affected millions in revenue, all while Sam believed I was sitting at home watching daytime television and eating cereal in my pajamas. The mail slot clanged, interrupting Barbara's developing lecture about the dignity of honest work. I stood to retrieve it, grateful for the excuse to leave the circle of judgment even momentarily. Among the bills and advertisements was another envelope I recognized immediately. Brennan & Associates, the marketing firm where Sam's friend Jake worked. Is that another rejection? Sam called out and I could hear the assumption in his voice. He was already certain of the answer. I opened it slowly, though I already knew what it would say. Jake had called Sam 2 nights ago and I'd heard every word through the bathroom door. They'd laughed about my interview, about how Jake had told his boss I was sweet but completely out of touch with modern marketing. The letter was just a formality. We regret to inform you, I read aloud, returning to my seat. Sam held out his hand for the letter and I passed it over, watching him scan it with barely concealed satisfaction. Well, at least they responded, Barbara said as if this was a kindness. Some companies don't even bother anymore. He turned to Sam. Remember when you got promoted last month? You said there were over 200 applicants for that position. And you got it because you're exceptional. Claire, you should be proud of Sam. Not everyone can be successful, but at least you married someone who is. The promotion. Senior Manager of Strategic Initiatives at Apex Solutions. A position I'd created specifically for him through a series of encrypted communications with Patricia. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed him to feel secure enough to reveal his true nature. The more powerful he felt, the more careless he became with his cruelty. The intervention program starts Monday, Tom said, sliding another paper across the table. It's 3 mornings a week. They'll help with everything. Interview skills, appropriate dress, even basic computer literacy. I know how to use a computer, I said, allowing a hint of frustration to creep into my voice. Just enough to seem defensive, not enough to seem suspicious. Of course you do, Sam said, his tone suggesting the opposite. But knowing how to check email and knowing how to use professional software are different things. Did you even know Excel has formulas? It's not just boxes for typing numbers. Last week, I'd used Excel to build a predictive model for our third-quarter earnings that would have made Sam's head spin. But I just nodded, letting him explain spreadsheets to me like I was a child. I'll think about the program, I said finally, and Barbara beamed as if I'd just agreed to enter rehab. That's all we ask, she said, standing to leave. Tom, we should go. Let them discuss this privately. She kissed Sam's cheek, then looked at me. We're doing this from a place of love, Claire. Sometimes the greatest gift is someone willing to tell you the truth. After they left, Sam pulled me into what he probably thought was a comforting hug. They mean well, he said into my hair. And they're right. This has gone on too long. It's embarrassing, Claire. My colleagues ask about you, and what am I supposed to say? That my wife just can't seem to find her place in the world. I stayed still in his arms, thinking about Monday's board meeting, the one where I'd participate virtually under my CO identity while Sam sat 3 floors below, never knowing his wife was discussing his department's budget. The surveillance equipment Patricia was installing tomorrow would capture everything I needed. 3 years of this charade, 3 years of tests, and Sam had failed every single one. I'll try harder, I whispered, the perfect words of a defeated spouse. I know you will, he said, already pulling away to check his phone. Oh, Davidson's promotion party is tomorrow night. You don't have to come if you don't want to. I know it's hard being around successful people when you're struggling. The doorbell rang at 7:30 sharp, just as I was clearing away the remnants of Barbara's intervention paperwork. Through the peephole, I saw Marcus standing there with a woman I didn't recognize, his arm draped possessively around her shoulders. Behind them, David was parking his BMW, the one he'd leased last month after his raise. A raise I'd approved through 3 layers of corporate bureaucracy. Claire, this is Linda, Marcus announced when I opened the door, steering his girlfriend past me without waiting for an invitation. Linda offered an awkward smile and extended her hand, which I shook briefly. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. Is it true? Linda whispered while Marcus headed straight for the liquor cabinet. That you've been looking for work for 3 years. Before I could answer, Sam appeared from the bedroom, his face lighting up at the sight of his audience arriving. Marcus. Perfect timing. I just opened the Macallan 25. The good stuff for Davidson's promotion celebration. He completely ignored Linda's question, pulling Marcus into one of those backslapping embraces men do when they're trying to prove something. David entered next, followed by 3 other colleagues from Apex Solutions whose names I knew from personnel files but pretended to struggle with. Brett from logistics, James from customer service, and Ryan from Sam's own department. Each of them greeted me with that particular expression people reserve for elderly relatives or sick puppies. Poor Claire. Still unemployed. Still trying. Claire was just telling us about her latest rejection, Sam announced to the room, gesturing at the letter still sitting on our coffee table. Brennan and Associates. She really thought she had a chance with that one. The men arranged themselves across our living room furniture, each holding crystal tumblers filled with scotch from my private collection. The bottle had cost $800, purchased during a business trip to Scotland 2 years ago. Sam had found it in the back of our closet last month and assumed it was a gift from his company. You know what your problem is, Claire? David said, settling into the leather armchair I'd bought the year I founded Apex. You're not being realistic about your prospects. At this point, any job is better than no job. That's what I keep telling her, Sam agreed, refilling glasses with my scotch. But she's got this pride thing. Keeps applying for positions she's not qualified for. Marcus pulled Linda down beside him on the couch. Maybe retail isn't such a bad idea. My cousin started at Target after being unemployed for 6 months. Now she's an assistant manager. Took her 5 years, but still. 5 years to become an assistant manager. I nodded thoughtfully as if this was genuinely helpful advice, while mentally reviewing Marcus's latest project reports. He'd missed 3 critical deadlines this quarter, each time blaming system errors that I knew were user mistakes. Actually, Ryan chimed in, already on his second drink, my neighbor's looking for someone to help with her dog walking business. It's not glamorous, but it's $20 an hour under the table. Sam laughed, the sound sharp and mean. Claire walking dogs. Can you imagine? She can barely handle making breakfast without burning something. The room erupted in laughter, and I felt Linda shift uncomfortably beside Marcus. But the evening was just beginning. Sam, energized by his audience, pulled out his phone with the theatrical flair of a magician preparing his best trick. You guys have to see this, he said, swiping through his videos. Last month I recorded Claire practicing for an interview. She had no idea I was filming. The video started playing and there I was on the small screen standing in front of our bedroom mirror, rehearsing answers to standard interview questions. But the answers were wrong, stilted and confused, because Sam had coached me incorrectly the night before. He told me the interviewer would want to hear about leadership experience when the position was entry-level. He'd insisted I emphasize skills I didn't need while ignoring the ones that mattered. Tell me about your greatest weakness, my recorded voice said, and I watched myself on screen fumble through an answer about being too much of a perfectionist, the exact cliché Sam had insisted would sound professional. The men howled with laughter. David was wiping tears from his eyes. She actually said the perfectionist thing? That's interview suicide. Wait, it gets better, Sam promised, starting another video. This one showed me after the interview sitting in my car looking defeated. I hadn't known he'd followed me, hadn't seen him filming from across the parking lot. We should make a compilation, Marcus suggested, pulling out his own phone. Claire's greatest interview failures. We could submit it to those fail video channels. Yes. David was already recording, pointing his phone at me. Claire, tell them about today's rejection. Come on, perform for us. Perform. Like a trained animal. Sam gestured for me to come closer, patting the arm of his chair like he was calling a dog. Come here, honey. Tell the guys about Brennan and Associates. Tell them what Jake said about your references. I stood slowly, walked over to Sam's chair, and began reciting the rejection, keeping my voice flat and defeated. David kept recording. Marcus was laughing so hard he was shaking, and Sam looked triumphant like he'd just won something important. This is cruel. The voice cut through the laughter like a blade. Linda was standing, her face flushed with anger. This is cruel and you all know it. You're adults bullying someone who's already struggling. The room went silent. Sam's expression shifted from amused to annoyed in seconds. Linda, you don't understand the situation. You have a real career. You're an accountant. Claire here. He gestured dismissively at me. She's been playing at finding work for 3 years. It's not bullying when it's truth. Besides, Marcus added, pulling at Linda's arm to sit back down, Claire doesn't mind. Do you, Claire? Before I could respond, Linda shook off Marcus's hand. You know what I heard last week? That Apex Solutions has some mysterious owner. Someone who built the whole company from nothing but never shows their face. Just communicates through encrypted channels and shell companies. The room grew quiet. Even drunk, these men knew the rumors about their company's reclusive founder. The ghost in the machine who'd turned a small startup into a multi-state operation. Fairy tales, Sam said finally, but his voice had lost some of its swagger. Urban legends won't help losers find jobs. Trust me, if there was some secret genius running Apex, we'd know. We're senior management. Senior management. Sam was a middle manager at best, 2 levels below anyone who might actually know the truth. But I just lowered my eyes, playing my part while Linda stared at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I need some air," I said quietly and headed for our bedroom. Behind me, I heard Sam apologizing for my sensitivity, heard the laughter resume though more subdued now. Linda's voice carried through, making excuses about an early morning, and I heard Marcus's protests as she prepared to leave. The celebration continued for 3 more hours. I sat in our bedroom, door cracked slightly, listening to them dissect my failures, my incompetence, my inability to contribute anything meaningful to the world. Each comment was recorded by the devices Patricia had installed that morning, every cruel word captured in high definition. By 2 in the morning, the apartment was finally quiet except for Sam's snoring from the living room where he'd passed out on the couch. I crept to our bedroom closet and pressed my thumb against what looked like a simple coat hook. The biometric scanner hidden beneath recognized my print immediately, and the back panel slid open silently. My real office hummed to life. 3 monitors flickered on, displaying Apex Solutions' global operations. The Tokyo division was just opening for their day. The London branch was in the middle of a major client presentation. And here in New York, 3,000 employees were sleeping peacefully, having no idea their CEO was about to flip their world upside down. Patricia's encrypted message waited on the center screen. All recordings secured. Audio and video quality excellent. Legal team reviewing for actionable violations. Board meeting scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. I pulled up the employee files for every man who'd laughed in my living room tonight. Marcus, 2 sexual harassment complaints, both buried by HR at Sam's insistence. David, expense report fraud totaling $30,000 over 2 years. Brett, James, Ryan, various infractions from discrimination to insider trading, all documented, all ignored because they were part of Sam's inner circle. Through the doorway I could see Sam's form on the couch, one arm hanging off the edge, his mouth open. 3 years I'd given him to prove he could love someone he saw as beneath him. 3 years of tests, each one failed more spectacularly than the last. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I would sit in a virtual board meeting as Alexandra Chin, the mysterious founder of Apex Solutions. At the same time, Claire Whitmore would arrive for her interview at the company, one final performance for Sam's amusement. I stared at the screens showing my empire, built from nothing, run from shadows, about to emerge into devastating light. The gathering storm was about to break, and Sam had no idea he was standing directly in its path. The monitors cast blue light across my face as I shut down the system at 4:30 in the morning. Sam hadn't stirred from the couch, his snoring echoing through our apartment. I dressed silently in the darkness, choosing worn jeans and an old college sweatshirt, clothes that would soon be replaced by something far more calculated. My hands were steady as I wrote a note for Sam, "Gone to interview. Wish me luck." I left it where he'd find it, next to the coffee maker. The streets were empty except for delivery trucks and the occasional jogger as I made my way to Apex Solutions. Instead of the main entrance where security would recognize any executive, I descended the concrete steps to the service entrance, the one used by maintenance staff and delivery personnel. My visitor badge, prepared weeks ago under the name Claire Smith, granted me access to the loading dock. Patricia was waiting in the basement storage room we'd converted into a temporary staging area. She held up a polyester suit that looked like it came from a discount store's clearance rack, complete with pills on the fabric and a hem that was slightly uneven. "This is almost painful to look at," Patricia said, handing me the outfit. $40 including the shoes. The interviewing team won't be able to hide their disdain. "That's the point," I replied, examining the cheap fabric. "Show me the footage from last week." Patricia pulled up security recordings on her tablet. 3 junior managers sat around a conference table, reviewing their latest victim's resume. The woman, a single mother returning to work after raising her children, had performed admirably in her interview. But here they were afterward, mocking her nervousness, her outfit, the way she'd mispronounced a technical term. She actually started crying. One of them laughed on the recording. I asked her why she thought she deserved the position and she just broke down. It was pathetic. These were Sam's protégés, handpicked for their ability to make others feel small. Thomas, barely 25 but already perfecting corporate cruelty. Jason, who'd been rejected from better companies and took it out on every candidate he interviewed. And Mitchell, whose own incompetence was masked by his talent for humiliating others. I changed into the polyester disaster, stuffing my real clothes into a bag Patricia would hide. The shoes pinched my feet immediately. The suit jacket pulled at the shoulders. Everything about this outfit screamed trying too hard with too little money. Your interview is at 9, Patricia reminded me, adjusting the visitor badge to hang slightly crooked. I'll be monitoring from security. The executive bathroom on the 14th floor will be cleared and ready for your transformation at 9:20. I took the regular elevator up to the main lobby, joining the early morning security staff and maintenance workers. At 7:30, I positioned myself on one of the uncomfortable plastic chairs near the reception desk, clutching a folder containing my fake resume. The real employees began arriving at 8, flooding past me in their morning rush. Not one of them glanced at the woman in the cheap suit hunched over her papers. My phone buzzed with a text from Sam. Good luck at your little interview. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly. At 8:30, the lobby filled with the usual morning energy. Account managers chatting about weekend plans, developers arguing about code, assistants juggling coffee orders. My employees, all of them completely unaware their CEO sat among them. Then I smelled him before I saw him. Sam's cologne, the expensive one he'd charged to his company card last month, preceded him through the revolving doors. He was talking loudly on his phone, his voice carrying across the marble floor. No, I told Davidson to handle the Peterson account. I can't do everything myself. He paused, listening, then laughed. Yeah, my wife's here for another interview. I know it's getting ridiculous. 3 years of this. He strode past me without looking, then stopped. Turned. His eyes found me and his face transformed with delighted malice. He ended his call immediately and pulled out his phone again, his fingers flying across the screen. Within seconds, I saw Marcus and David emerge from the elevators, followed by the others from last night's celebration. They tried to be subtle, gathering near the security desk where they could watch me without seeming obvious. Sam made a show of greeting them naturally as if they'd just happened to meet, but their eyes kept finding me, their smirks barely suppressed. At 5 minutes to 9, a young woman from HR appeared. Miss Smith? They're ready for you now. The elevator ride felt eternal. Sam's cologne still lingered in my nostrils, mixing with the smell of burned coffee from the HR assistant's cup. She led me through the cubicle maze to a glass-walled conference room where Thomas, Jason, and Mitchell waited, their expressions already showing contempt. Miss Smith, Thomas began without standing or offering a handshake. We've reviewed your resume. There are some concerning gaps. 3 years to be exact, Jason added, flipping through papers he wasn't really reading. What exactly have you been doing? Looking for the right opportunity, I began, deliberately letting my voice shake slightly. The right opportunity? Mitchell laughed. After 3 years, don't you think it's time to lower your standards? Through the glass walls, I could see Sam's group had positioned themselves at a nearby cluster of desks, pretending to work while watching my humiliation. Sam was recording with his phone, not even trying to hide it. Tell us about your experience with data management systems, Thomas said, knowing from my fake resume that I'd claimed only basic knowledge. I fumbled through an answer, mixing up terms, watching their eyes glaze with superiority. When reaching for my water glass, I knocked it over, sending water across the table. Jason jumped back with exaggerated alarm while Mitchell actually laughed out loud. I'm so sorry, I stammered, using tissues to mop up the spill while they watched without helping. What would you say is your biggest weakness? Thomas asked, the question dripping with condescension. I paused, meeting his eyes directly for just a moment. Believing in people who don't deserve it. Something flickered across Thomas's face, a moment of confusion at the unexpected response. But Jason was already moving on, asking about salary expectations, clearly just wanting to hear a desperate number they could mock later. After exactly 15 minutes, they stood in unison. We'll be in touch, Mitchell said, already walking toward the door. HR will show you out. But I didn't need HR. I knew exactly where I was going. As they left through one door, I exited through another, heading straight for the executive elevator. My badge, the visitor one, wouldn't work here, but Patricia had ensured the elevator would be waiting, its cameras temporarily offline. The 14th floor was reserved for senior management, though none of them ever arrived before 9:30. The executive bathroom was empty, pristine with the bag Patricia had placed there sitting on the marble counter. I peeled off the polyester disaster and stepped into Armani armor. The suit had been tailored perfectly, every line designed to convey power. The Louboutin heels lifted me not just physically but psychologically. I applied lipstick in the shade I'd worn the day I'd signed Apex Solutions Incorporation papers. Blood red. Victory red. Patricia had included the CEO badge, the real one with full building access, and a folder containing termination papers for Sam and his entire circle. Each document was backed by 3 years of evidence, every cruel joke, every buried complaint, every violation of company policy documented and verified. I looked in the mirror and saw myself clearly for the first time in 3 years. Not the defeated wife, not the desperate job seeker, but Claire Whitmore, founder and CEO of Apex Solutions. Through the bathroom door I could hear voices in the hallway. Sam's laugh echoed off the walls, his friends joining in. They were heading back to their offices, probably to review the video of my interview, to add it to their collection of my failures. 10 more minutes, I thought, applying one final coat of lipstick. 10 more minutes of their world as they knew it. I stepped out of the executive bathroom and into the hallway, my heels announcing each step with sharp precision against the marble floor. The sound was different now, no longer the shuffling of worn flats but the confident strike of 4-inch Louboutins. Employees I'd never formally met parted before me, their confusion evident. Who was this woman with CEO-level access walking through their floor? The private elevator waited at the end of the hall, its brass doors gleaming. Sam had asked about this elevator dozens of times, wondering why it existed, who used it, why his badge never granted access. I pressed my thumb against the biometric scanner hidden in the call button. The doors opened silently, revealing the mahogany-paneled interior that had carried me to secret board meetings for 3 years. As the elevator rose, I pulled out my phone to access the security feeds Patricia had routed to my device. The executive conference room on the 15th floor was full. Sam stood at the center, his hands animated as he recreated my water-spilling moment from the interview. Marcus was hunched over his phone, uploading videos to their private group chat, the one they thought was secret but had been monitored by our IT department for months. David was typing rapidly, adding commentary to something called Loser Wife Chronicles, a shared document where they'd been collecting my failures for the past year. You should have seen her face when they asked about data management, Sam was saying, his voice carrying through the audio feed. She literally said, "Data what?" Like she'd never heard the term before. That was a lie, of course. I'd fumbled the technical terms deliberately, but I'd never said anything that absurd. But his version made for a better story, and his audience was eager to believe the worst. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor. The hallway stretched before me, all glass and chrome and carefully curated modern art. At the far end, the conference room glowed with morning light. I could see them through the transparent walls. 7 men who believed they owned this space, this company, this moment. I walked slowly, deliberately, letting each footstep build like thunder. A few senior executives passed me in the hallway, doing double takes at the unknown woman with CEO clearance, but no one stopped me. Patricia had done her job well, ensuring the right people were conveniently elsewhere. 20 feet from the door I paused. Through the glass, I watched Sam pull up another video on the conference room's smart screen. It was from 2 weeks ago, me leaving another failed interview, shoulders slumped in manufactured defeat. They were laughing so hard that Marcus was wiping his eyes. This was their morning entertainment, their bonding ritual, their proof of superiority. I pushed open the glass door and stood in the threshold, letting my presence fill the space. The laughter continued for 3 more seconds. 3 seconds where they didn't notice me, 3 seconds of pure, oblivious joy at my expense. Then David saw me first. His face went pale, his hand frozen mid-gesture. The others followed his gaze. Sam's coffee cup stopped halfway to his mouth. The liquid inside trembled, a tiny earthquake of recognition. His eyes traveled from my shoes to my suit to my face, cycling through confusion, disbelief, and the first stirrings of fear. "Gentlemen," I said, my voice carrying the authority I'd hidden for 3 years. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." "Claire." Sam's voice cracked on my name. "How did you? This is a restricted floor." "High floor," I interrupted, pulling out my phone. With one touch, every screen in the conference room, 3 monitors, 2 tablets, even their personal phones, lit up with the same document. The incorporation papers for Apex Solutions, dated 5 years before I'd met Sam. My signature bold and clear. My photograph from the filing younger but unmistakably me. Actually, my entire building. Marcus's coffee cup slipped from his hand. The crash of ceramic on marble was sharp, final, coffee spreading across the white floor like a confession. I don't understand, Sam stammered, his usual confidence evaporating. This has to be some kind of joke. The only joke, I said, stepping fully into the room, is that you lived with me for 4 years and never once wondered how I afforded our apartment. Never questioned why I had savings despite being unemployed. Never noticed that every single thing you attributed to your success was actually mine. I touched my phone again. The screens changed, displaying a spreadsheet of dates, times, and recordings. 3 years of documentation appeared in neat rows. January 15th, Sam calls Claire a professional failure at company dinner. The first entry read, accompanied by audio. Sam's recorded voice filled the room. My wife couldn't get hired at McDonald's. March 22nd, Marcus suggests Claire should try adult entertainment as a career option. Marcus's face went from pale to green as his own voice played back his cruel suggestion. June 3rd, David creates betting pool on how many interviews Claire will fail this month. The evidence included screenshots of emails, Venmo transactions, and a spreadsheet tracking their wagers on my humiliation. Stop, Sam pleaded, but I was just beginning. The compilation video began playing. Every time they'd called me loser over the past year, edited together in a devastating montage. The word repeated like a drum beat. Loser at breakfast. Loser at dinner parties. Loser in front of family. Loser when they thought I was sleeping. You recorded us? David's phone clattered to the floor as he finally understood the magnitude of his situation. Every moment, I confirmed. Every cruel joke, every discrimination lawsuit you buried, every expense report you falsified. Did you really think nobody was watching? That there were no consequences for creating a hostile work environment in my own company? Your company? Sam was grasping for any foothold. But you're unemployed. You can't even. I'm Claire Whitmore, I said, each word deliberate and sharp. I built Apex Solutions from nothing while you were still playing video games in your mother's basement. I created the position you're so proud of. I approved your promotion last month thinking maybe power would reveal character. Instead, it revealed exactly who you really are. The security team appeared in the doorway. 6 officers I'd personally selected that morning for this specific task. They stood silent, waiting for my signal. Your employment is terminated immediately for gross misconduct, I announced, pulling the termination papers from my folder. Securities fraud, harassment, discrimination, misuse of company resources, and violation of the corporate code of conduct you signed but never read. Sam shot to his feet, his chair rolling backward. You can't do this. I'm your husband. I reached for my wedding ring, the diamond he'd bought with what he thought was his bonus but was actually my money, filtered through corporate structures he'd never understood. I placed it on the conference table with deliberate precision, the small click of metal on glass somehow louder than Marcus's shattered coffee cup. We're my husband, I corrected. The divorce papers will be at your mother's house by noon, along with your belongings from my apartment. The one I bought before we met. The one you never thought to check the deed for. This is illegal, David protested, though his voice shook. You can't just. Your company devices are already locked, I continued, ignoring his interruption. Your access badges are deactivated. Your stock options are worthless due to the misconduct clauses you never read. Your final paychecks will cover exactly what you're owed minus the damages from your policy violations. Sam's final attempt was desperate, manipulative, exactly what I'd expected. Claire, I loved you. We can work this out. The laugh that escaped me was genuine, surprising even myself with its brightness. You loved what you thought was your superiority over me. You loved having someone to look down on. That's not love, Sam. That's just pathetic. The security team stepped forward and I turned to leave, my heels clicking against marble with the rhythm of victory. The elevator descended in silence, carrying me away from the devastation I'd left in the conference room. Through the glass walls of the building, I could see security escorting Sam and his crew toward the exit, their belongings in cardboard boxes. Other employees had stopped working to watch, their faces pressed against office windows, witnessing the fall of men they'd feared for years. My phone vibrated insistently in my pocket. Barbara's name flashed on the screen for the 7th time in 3 minutes. I let it ring through to voicemail again, knowing the explosion was building. Patricia met me in the lobby, her tablet already displaying a stream of alerts. "Legal has frozen their corporate accounts," she reported, matching my stride toward my real office. "IT confirms all company devices are locked. The building passes have been deactivated. Moving company is en route to your apartment." The phone rang again. This time I answered. "How dare you?" Barbara's voice shrieked through the speaker, so loud that Patricia flinched. "You manipulative witch. You've destroyed my son. After everything we've done for you, taking you in when nobody else would hire you." "Barbara," I interrupted, my voice steady and cold. "Your son documented himself committing securities fraud. He recorded himself harassing employees. He created evidence of discrimination that could result in criminal charges. That's not, he would never. I have 3 years of recordings, Barbara. Including the dinner where you suggested I should be grateful someone like Sam would even look at someone like me. Remember? The worthless woman who couldn't even get a job at a grocery store." Her breathing was ragged on the other end. "We were trying to help you improve yourself. You were enjoying feeling superior. There's a difference." I pulled up the prenuptial agreement on Patricia's tablet. Sam insisted on this prenup to protect his assets from his gold-digging wife. Ironically, it protects my assets from him now. He gets nothing. No alimony, no property, no claim to anything I built. "You're lying." Sam said the apartment was his bonus from work. "The apartment has been in my name since before I met your son. The car he drives, leased through my company. The vacation you took last month, paid for through a family wellness program I created. You've been living off my success while calling me worthless." The silence stretched before Barbara's voice returned, smaller now, pleading. "We're family, Claire. Whatever problems you have with Sam, surely you wouldn't destroy family. Think about what this will do to his reputation, his future." "His reputation is exactly what he earned. Goodbye, Barbara." I ended the call and turned off my phone entirely. Patricia guided me to the executive suite I'd never used openly, the one with CO etched on the door. Inside was the office I'd designed but never occupied, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "You have a visitor," Patricia said, checking her tablet. "Linda Chin, Marcus's girlfriend from last night. She's been waiting for 20 minutes. Linda stood when I entered, her expression a mixture of uncertainty and determination. She was wearing a different outfit from last night, more professional, as if she'd dressed for an interview. "I knew something was off," she said without preamble. "Last night the way they talked about you, but you were so calm. Too calm. And then this morning Marcus called panicking about being fired by someone named Claire Whitmore. Your last name isn't even the same as Sam's." "I kept my maiden name," I said, gesturing for her to sit. "Though Sam told everyone I took his. I researched Apex Solutions weeks ago when Marcus got the job. No photos of the CEO anywhere. Shell companies and holding structures. Someone very smart who wanted to stay hidden." Linda pulled out her phone, showing me her notes. "I'm a forensic accountant. I know how to follow money trails. The apartment you live in? Purchased by a trust that traces back to the same holdings as this company. You did your homework." "I also did homework on Marcus," she continued, her voice hardening. "The expense reports that didn't add up. The client dinners that happened when clients weren't in town. I was planning to leave him anyway, but what happened last night confirmed it. The way they treated you was disgusting. Most people would have stayed quiet." Linda shook her head. "My mother was unemployed for 2 years after her company downsized. I watched people treat her like she was worthless, like being between jobs meant she had no value. I promised myself I'd never be someone who stayed silent." I studied her for a moment, this woman who'd stood up in a room full of bullies, who'd researched truth when everyone else accepted lies. "Are you happy at your current firm?" "I was laid off last month," Linda admitted. "Budget cuts. Marcus doesn't know. I've been pretending to go to work while job hunting. Ironic, right? Sitting in that room while they mocked you for being unemployed, and I'm secretly in the same position." "Not the same position," I corrected. "You're not unemployed. You're Apex Solutions' new senior forensic accountant, if you want the position." I need someone who can audit 3 years of financial records and find every irregularity Marcus and his friends created. Linda's eyes widened. You're serious? I value people who stand up to bullies. Start Monday. She nodded, then surprised me by laughing. Marcus is going to lose his mind when he finds out. I left the office at 6 that evening, taking the elevator down to the parking garage. The space was nearly empty, most employees having left for the day. But standing next to my car was Sam, his suit wrinkled, his hair disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. Security emerged from their posts, but I held up a hand to stop them. I wanted to hear what he had to say, what final manipulation he'd attempt. You set me up, he started, his voice hoarse. 3 years of pretending, of lying to me. 3 years of testing whether you could love someone you saw as beneath you. You failed every single test. He switched tactics, spreading his hands in a gesture of reconciliation. We can work this out, Claire. You don't have to do this. We can go to counseling, start over. With what money, Sam? You're unemployed now. No reference, no severance, no prospects. Who's going to hire someone who was fired for harassment and fraud? His face cycled through emotions before landing on false remorse. I didn't mean those things I said. It was just jokes, just guy talk. You know I loved you. You loved having someone to feel superior to. There's a difference. Finally, his true nature emerged, the anger and threats I'd been expecting. I'll destroy you. I'll tell everyone you're a manipulative liar. I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. With what platform? You have no credibility, no connections, no resources. Everything you thought you built was actually mine. I moved past him toward my car. The apartment will be empty when you arrive. Your belongings are at your mother's house. The doorman has been instructed not to allow you entry. You're still a loser, he called after me, his final desperate shot. Money doesn't change that. You're still the woman who couldn't get hired anywhere. I turned back, allowing myself a genuine smile. No, Sam. I'm successful. You're just unemployed. The drive home was strange, knowing Sam wouldn't be there. The apartment felt different when I entered. Larger somehow, like it could finally breathe. Patricia's team had been thorough. Every trace of Sam was gone, from his gaming setup to his collection of watches he thought were investments. At midnight, I stood in the kitchen, my laptop open on the counter, no longer hidden. No more fake job search tabs, no more pretend resume updates, no more diminishing myself. But the silence felt heavy, like the space was waiting for something. I called Emma in Seattle, my sister who I'd kept at arm's length to maintain my cover. She answered on the second ring despite the late hour. It's over, I said without preamble. The pretending is done. Her relief was immediate and audible. Thank God, Claire. I've hated watching you disappear. 3 years of seeing you shrink yourself for that man. When are you coming to visit the real you? Soon, I promised Emma, still holding the phone against my ear. I need to clean up the mess here first. After we hung up, I stood in my empty apartment, the silence no longer oppressive but somehow expectant, like the building itself was waiting to see what would come next. The next morning arrived gray and overcast, matching the weight in my chest as I prepared for what would be the most important meeting of my career. Not a board meeting or investor presentation, but my first honest conversation with the 3,000 people who worked for Apex Solutions without knowing who I really was. Patricia had arranged everything in the main auditorium. Camera crews were setting up for the live stream that would reach every office, every remote employee, every person whose life had been affected by the toxic culture I'd allowed to fester while playing my game with Sam. At exactly 9 o'clock, I walked onto the stage. No podium, no notes, just me standing before a camera that would broadcast my face across the company for the first time. The red recording light blinked on. My name is Claire Whitmore, I began, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. I'm the founder and CEO of Apex Solutions. For the past 3 years, you've received messages from me through encrypted channels, never knowing my face or my story. Today that changes. The chat sidebar on the monitor immediately flooded with messages, too fast to read. Patricia would filter the important ones later. Yesterday, 5 managers were terminated for gross misconduct. One of them was my husband. I let that sink in before continuing. For 3 years, I posed as an unemployed spouse to observe the culture of this company from the ground level. What I discovered was systematic harassment, discrimination, and a toxic environment that drove talented people away. I pulled up the new policy documents on the screen behind me. Effective immediately, we're implementing anonymous reporting systems with third-party oversight. Any manager with harassment complaints will face immediate investigation. We're establishing a restoration program for employees who left due to hostile work conditions. The messages were pouring in faster now. Patricia highlighted one. Jennifer Park requesting reinstatement. Says Sam Morrison made her working life unbearable for 2 years. Jennifer, I said directly to the camera, knowing she was watching. Your reinstatement is approved. To everyone who left because of harassment or discrimination, our doors are open. We failed you before. We won't fail you again. By noon, 17 former employees had submitted reinstatement requests. Each application included stories of mockery, sabotage, and systematic cruelty that traced back to Sam and his inner circle. Reading them made my stomach turn. This wasn't just about what they'd done to me. It was about the careers they'd destroyed, the dreams they'd crushed, the talent they'd driven away. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. Nancy Chen from the Financial Tribune had somehow gotten my direct line. Ms. Whitmore, I received an anonymous tip about mass firings at Apex Solutions. The source claims you orchestrated a personal vendetta against your husband. Care to comment? Instead of declining, I made a decision that Patricia would later call either brilliant or insane. I'll give you an exclusive interview, Ms. Chen. Tomorrow, 2 o'clock. Bring your cameras. The interview preparation consumed the rest of the day. Patricia and I crafted responses that walked the line between personal truth and corporate necessity. We selected evidence that exposed the perpetrators while protecting other victims' identities. By evening, we had a strategy that would control the narrative before Sam could spin it his way. Nancy Chen arrived with a full crew, transforming my office into a makeshift studio. She was younger than I'd expected, sharp-eyed and hungry for the story that would make her career. Let's start with the obvious question, Nancy began once the cameras were rolling. You pretended to be unemployed for 3 years while secretly running a multi-million-dollar company. Why? I wanted to know if someone could love me without my success. I answered, the truth simpler than all the complex explanations I'd prepared. Instead, I discovered something darker. How power without accountability destroys people. Your husband was one of the terminated employees? I seem to be ex-husband. And yes, he was recorded harassing subordinates, mocking job candidates, and creating a hostile work environment. The fact that he was married to me doesn't exempt him from consequences. Nancy leaned forward, sensing the real story. But surely this feels personal. He humiliated you for years. He humiliated who he thought I was. An unemployed woman he considered worthless. The personal betrayal is nothing compared to discovering he'd driven talented people from my company. People like Jennifer Park, who's now leading our innovation team. The interview aired that evening. Within hours, it went viral with the headline, CEO discovers husband's workplace harassment while posing as unemployed wife. The story spread across business networks, social media, and international news outlets. Sam's attempted rebuttal came the next day through a hastily arranged press conference at his lawyer's office. But every claim he made was immediately countered by the evidence we released. Audio of him calling female employees diversity hires. Video of him mocking job candidates. Email threads showing buried complaints. The domino effect was swift and devastating. Sam's previous employer, Datatech Solutions, announced an internal investigation after former employees came forward with similar stories. Marcus's ex-company discovered he'd been falsifying expense reports for years. David's coding bootcamp revealed he'd never actually completed their program, just forged a certificate. I watched from my office as their professional networks disintegrated in real time. LinkedIn connections severed like cut telephone wires. Endorsements vanished. Former colleagues publicly distanced themselves. Their names became radioactive in the industry. Patricia brought hourly updates, each one documenting another piece of their professional deaths. Marcus just got rejected from a junior position at a startup. David's teaching application was denied. Sam's been blacklisted from every major firm in the city. But instead of satisfaction, I felt a growing hollowness. Each update brought less joy, less vindication, just a spreading numbness that seemed to swallow the anger that had fueled me for so long. Emma's flight landed that evening. She came straight from the airport, still pulling her suitcase when she entered my office. She took one look at the monitors surrounding my desk, all displaying various feeds of Sam's collapse, and shook her head. "You won," she said, but her tone suggested otherwise. "Did I?" I asked, genuinely unsure anymore. "Are you happy?" The question hung between us. Was I happy? Sam was destroyed. His friends were ruined. The toxic culture was being excavated from my company. I'd revealed myself as a powerful CEO instead of a helpless victim. But happiness? That seemed like something from another life. "Claire," Emma said, sitting on the edge of my desk like she used to when we were kids in Dad's office. "Do you remember why you built this company?" "To honor Dad's memory. After those corporate raiders destroyed his business." "And what have you become?" Her voice was gentle, but the words cut deep. "You've become them. The corporate raiders who destroyed Dad. You just have better justification." The truth of it hit me like cold water. I'd spent so much time orchestrating Sam's downfall that I'd lost sight of who I was becoming in the process. The monitors around me suddenly looked like prison bars, each screen showing another angle of destruction I'd carefully orchestrated. Emma poured us both wine from a bottle she'd brought from Seattle, and we sat in my office as the monitors around us continued their silent display of Sam's professional funeral. The wine tasted bitter against the truth of her words. "I'm not saying what Sam did was right," Emma continued, tucking her legs beneath her on the leather couch. "But Dad wouldn't recognize you right now. The sister I knew built companies to create opportunities, not to orchestrate destruction." 2 weeks passed in a blur of corporate restructuring and media management. The story had taken on a life of its own, spawning think pieces about workplace toxicity, gender dynamics, and corporate accountability. My inbox overflowed with interview requests, book deals, and speaking engagements. I declined them all, focusing instead on rebuilding Apex's culture from the ground up. Then Patricia burst into my office on a Thursday morning, her face flushed with concern. "Sam's in the lobby. He's intoxicated and causing a scene." I pulled up the security feed on my center monitor. There he was, disheveled beyond recognition. His expensive suit was replaced with wrinkled khakis and a stained polo shirt. His hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp and greasy. He was shouting at the security desk, his words slurring but his intent clear. "I demand to see her. Claire, I know you're watching. You destroyed my life, you manipulative witch." Employees had begun gathering, some recognizing him from the viral news coverage. Several had their phones out, recording his meltdown. He stumbled, catching himself on the security desk, then continued his tirade. "She trapped me. 3 years of lies. She's not some victim. She's a fraud who destroyed good men for her sick game." Security began moving toward him, but I stood abruptly. "I'm going down there." Patricia grabbed my arm. "That's what he wants. Don't give him the satisfaction." "No," I said, pulling free. "This needs to end properly. In person. Where it all started." The elevator ride down felt both endless and too brief. When the doors opened to the main lobby, the gathered crowd parted. Sam's bloodshot eyes found mine immediately, a mixture of rage and desperation flickering across his face. "There she is," he announced to the crowd, his voice cracking. "The great Claire Whitmore. The puppet master. The woman who destroyed 5 careers for her own entertainment." I walked toward him slowly, my heels clicking against the marble floor with measured precision. The lobby fell silent except for that rhythmic sound and Sam's labored breathing. When I stopped 3 feet from him, close enough to smell the alcohol seeping from his pores, I spoke clearly enough for everyone to hear. "You want to know the truth, Sam? The complete truth." I didn't wait for his answer. "Yes, I tested you. For 3 years, I pretended to be unemployed to see if you could love someone you perceived as beneath you. Someone without power, without money, without status. You lied. I gave you 3 years of opportunities to show kindness. Every rejection letter I brought home, you mocked instead of comforted. Every failed interview you turned into entertainment for your friends. Every moment of vulnerability I showed you weaponized." The crowd was growing, employees from upper floors coming down to witness this final act. Sam swayed slightly, his anger giving way to something more desperate. "You set me up. You wanted me to fail." "No, Sam. I wanted you to succeed. I wanted you to prove that love could exist without power dynamics. That you could support someone you thought had nothing to offer but themselves. I pulled out my phone, showing him a photo from our wedding day. Remember this? You promised to love me for better or worse, richer or poorer. But you only loved the idea of being superior to me. That's not, I did love you. You loved having someone to look down on. Every cruel joke, every public humiliation, every moment you called me a loser. That wasn't love, Sam. That was abuse disguised as concern. His face crumbled, the fight draining from him. You destroyed everything. My career, my reputation, my life. I didn't destroy you, Sam, I said, my voice softer now but still carrying across the silent lobby. I just stopped protecting you from yourself. Your cruelty, your discrimination, your fraud. That was all you. I just made sure there were finally consequences. Security began moving forward again, but Sam wasn't fighting anymore. As they led him toward the exit, Patricia appeared at my elbow with a tablet, her expression unreadable. There's something you need to see, she said quietly, guiding me away from the dispersing crowd. In my office, she pulled up a file she'd been investigating. I did deep background on Sam after the confrontation. I found this. The screen showed a newspaper article from 15 years ago. Sam's father, Robert Morrison, was a VP at a tech company. Got caught in a downsizing when Sam was 12. Never recovered professionally. I read the article, seeing a younger version of Sam in the family photo. They lost their home 6 months later, Patricia continued. Lived in their car for 3 months. Sam's mother worked 3 jobs while his father spiraled into depression. Sam got through college on scholarships and loans, working nights to support his family. The revelation recontextualized everything without excusing it. Sam's cruelty toward the unemployed wasn't just arrogance. It was fear. Deep, traumatic fear of ending up like his father. He'd punched down because he was terrified of falling down himself. We're both products of corporate trauma, I said quietly, understanding flooding through me. His father was destroyed by corporate indifference. Mine was destroyed by corporate raiders. We both built our lives in response to that trauma. He chose to become the boot stepping on others. I chose to become the shadow pulling the strings. That evening, alone in my office with Emma's words still echoing and Patricia's revelation fresh in my mind, I sat before 2 documents. The first was Sam's complete termination package. Total professional destruction, potential criminal charges, financial ruin. The second was something different. A resignation agreement? Patricia read over my shoulder. With severance? Basic severance enough for 6 months. Conditional on completing therapy and agreeing never to hold a management position again. I signed the second document. He needs help, not complete annihilation. After everything he did to you? Destroying him completely would make me exactly like the people who destroyed my father and his. It would prove that power corrupts, that revenge is all that matters. I sealed the document in an envelope. This isn't mercy, Patricia. It's choosing who I want to be when the anger finally fades. Patricia handed the sealed envelope to Sam's lawyer the following Tuesday. The man, an overworked public defender who'd taken Sam's case out of pity, looked relieved that negotiations wouldn't be necessary. Within 3 days, we received confirmation that Sam had signed the resignation agreement, accepting the basic severance and mandatory therapy conditions. His lawyer delivered a handwritten letter along with the signed documents. I held it for a long moment before opening it, feeling its weight, not physical but emotional. Sam's handwriting was shaky, as if written after many failed attempts. Claire, this isn't an apology because I don't think you'd believe one. But I need you to know that I understand now. The fear of becoming nothing made me need someone to be less than me. I'm entering therapy. Moving to Oregon to live with my father. Ironic considering I spent my whole life running from his failure. Uncle Jim offered me work at his hardware store. Minimum wage but honest. Maybe I'll learn what I should have known all along. Sam. Barbara's letter arrived the same day, just 3 lines on her personal stationery. I created a monster because success was all that mattered. I'm volunteering at the unemployment center downtown now. Learning about real struggle, as you said. I filed both letters in a drawer without responding. Some bridges needed to remain burned, their ashes a reminder of what had been. But burned didn't mean nuclear. It meant finished, complete, with no radiation poisoning the future. 6 months flowed past in a blur of transformation. Apex Solutions became unrecognizable from the company Sam had worked for. Jennifer Park, the programmer he'd driven to resignation, now led our most innovative development team. Her latest project had 3 patents pending and interest from major tech giants. Linda Chin had uncovered financial irregularities beyond what we'd initially discovered, saving the company millions and earning her a promotion to chief financial auditor. The employees who had suffered under Sam's group weren't just surviving, they were thriving. Maria, whom Sam had called a diversity quota to her face, now headed our Latin American expansion. Thomas, the junior manager who'd helped humiliate me in that interview, had been replaced by someone Sam had repeatedly passed over for promotion. A quiet woman named Sarah who transformed the department's culture within weeks. We instituted something the business media called revolutionary, but I considered basic human decency. Every executive, including me, worked entry-level positions for 1 week each quarter. Not observing, not supervising, but actually doing the work. Answering phones, processing data, cleaning break rooms. The first time I worked customer service, handling angry calls for 8 hours, I understood viscerally what our frontline employees faced daily. Revenue increased 40%, but the number that mattered more to me was employee satisfaction. 92%, the highest in our industry. My father would have been proud. Not of the revenge, but of what grew from its ashes. Emma's wedding arrived in September, a small ceremony in Seattle overlooking Puget Sound. I stood as her maid of honor, wearing a simple lavender dress she'd chosen, no designer label necessary. When it came time for my speech, I looked out at the gathered faces, family and friends who'd watched my 3-year disappearance into Sam's shadow. We all wear masks, I began, champagne glass trembling slightly in my hand. Some for protection, some for deception, some because we forget who we are underneath them. Emma watched me disappear behind a mask I thought would reveal truth but instead obscured it. The greatest gift isn't finding someone who loves your mask. It's finding someone who helps you remember why you don't need one. The applause was warm, genuine. In the bathroom mirror later, reapplying lipstick, I saw neither the vengeful CO nor the defeated wife. Just Claire, tired from dancing, slightly drunk on champagne, mascara smudged from happy tears during the ceremony. Just human. Emma's new brother-in-law approached me during the reception, mentioning his younger brother had been laid off from a marketing firm. The old me would have been suspicious, would have investigated, would have tested. Instead, I handed him my business card. Have him send his resume to my office directly. We're always looking for good people. No tests. Emma asked later, overhearing the exchange. No games, I promised. Just honest chances for honest people. A year after Sam's departure, I attended the National Business Ethics Conference in Chicago. The irony of being a keynote speaker on corporate accountability wasn't lost on me. After my presentation on transparent leadership, I was gathering my materials when I saw him across the convention center. Sam sat in the back row of a workshop titled, Rebuilding After Corporate Trauma. He had a notebook open, pen in hand, actually taking notes. He'd lost weight, his expensive suit replaced with khakis and a simple button-down. His wedding ring was gone, but so was the arrogant tilt to his chin. Our eyes met across the distance. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he nodded, not much, just a small acknowledgement. I nodded back, the same subtle recognition. No words were needed or wanted. We were different people now, shaped by destruction but not defined by it. Later, Patricia mentioned she'd kept tabs on him despite my instructions to stop. He's been accepted to Portland State's social work program. Focus on workplace trauma and recovery. His thesis proposal is about the cycle of corporate abuse. I felt something unexpected rise in my chest. Not forgiveness, which would imply I still held the wound, and not satisfaction, which would mean I still needed the victory. It was quieter, more complex. Recognition, perhaps. We'd both been products of corporate trauma, handling it destructively, and now we were both trying to build something better from the wreckage. That evening, back in my office, I stood before the wall of monitors that had once tracked Sam's every movement, his every failure, his complete destruction. Only one remained active, showing Apex's real-time operations. Employees working late on projects they believed in, security guards doing their rounds, cleaning crews preparing for tomorrow. I powered down the last surveillance monitor permanently. There would be no more tracking, no more watching, no more needing to know. The revenge was complete, not because Sam was destroyed, he wasn't, but because I no longer needed it to define who I was. 3 years of pretending to be a loser. 1 year of revealing the truth. And now, finally, I was neither the victim nor the victor. I was just Claire Whitmore, building something worthwhile from the ashes of what we'd burned down together. The loser's revenge had ended, but what mattered more was what began afterward. A company built on accountability, a life built on truth, and a future that didn't require anyone else's failure for my success. The office was quiet except for the hum of computers and the distant sound of night traffic. I gathered my things, turned off the lights, and headed home to an apartment that was simply mine, where no one was keeping score anymore. This tale of hidden power and ultimate payback kept you hooked. Smash that like button right now. The moment that stunned me most was when Claire walked into the boardroom and revealed the truth. What was your favorite twist? Share it in the comments below. For more gripping stories of revenge and redemption, subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss what's next.